Hi everyone, and welcome back to Something is Up. In this episode, I'm joined by Daniel Scranton, an intuitive channeler and a spiritual teacher that I have been following for quite some time. Daniel shares his personal journey into channeling, from a Catholic upbringing and a period of skepticism to a series of experiences that led him into Reiki, meditation, and eventually direct contact with non physical intelligences. We explore how his channeling practice emerged, how information is received and translated, and how physical sensations, movement, and altered states of consciousness play a key role in the process. Daniel speaks about working with different sources, including the Arcturian Council and the Ascended Masters, and reflects on the growing number of people reporting awakening experiences today. We also discuss his perspective on the acceleration of these experiences, the increase in reported contact phenomena, and what he observes directly through his work with thousands of people worldwide. I hope you enjoyed this conversation like I did, so please welcome Daniel Scranton.
Hey, Daniel. Good morning.
Good day to you. Good evening.
So thank you very much for doing this, especially because it's very early in the morning for you.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate. So we've been talking a few times. I've been coming to you for advice a few times in the last couple of years, since a lot of my what we can call awakening started happening, and to get some readings. And I'd love your channeling it, and so it's always good to talk to you. Today, I want to start a little bit at the beginning for people that really don't understand even what channeling is, because my audience that I'm trying to build is between Italy and the UK, and probably people that are not really familiar with channeling, although it's been a phenomenon, or some, let's say, a practice, and something that's been going on now for probably more than 50 years. We had channel messages for a very long time. But how did it happen for you? What's your story?
The story for me is that, like most people who are born into a family in America that's Christian, I was raised with that religion, and specifically Catholicism, which I'm sure you're familiar with in Italy. And
we know something about that, yeah.
And I had a family that wanted to go to church every Sunday, not just Christmas and Easter, but every Sunday. And my mom actually has always been very interested in studying the Bible. So she actually taught catechism to kids. So I went to that too. It was also called CCD. I went to that. I went to church every Sunday, and I went to Catholic high school. So between those things, I developed a fear-based relationship with God. I was afraid of this being that existed somewhere out there high above me, and was, constantly looking at me as being either good enough, not good enough, doing what I was supposed to do, not doing what I was supposed to do, all that kind of thing. That was basically what my idea of religion was like almost constant scrutiny and judgment.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Connecticut, went to Boston University, where one of my innate interests was Greek and Roman mythology. So I took a course in Greek and Roman myth, and in this course, the professor is teaching us about all these different cultures from all these different time periods, and they all seem to be telling the same story in different ways about life on Earth. Everybody's got a creation myth. Everybody's got a flood myth. Some of them have even like a savior who comes and dies and comes back in 3 days. Like, it wasn't all, that's Dionysus in Greek. I remember that one. I don't remember any others, but but the whole idea that, Christianity had like the truth about all of this, or that, the one perspective, the one story, that was all shattered by my learning of all these different things. And so I started questioning my faith. And by the end of me graduating, I don't really know what I believed. I didn't think about it too much. I was too busy drinking, chasing girls, like doing all the things you do in your teens and early 20s. And then at 24, I moved to California. And I remember being in my apartment in California and just thinking about existence. I've always been a big thinker and a logical person. And I mean, I loved being in university. I loved studying Freud. I was a psychology major. So I studied Shakespeare. I loved Shakespeare. It was so profound to me, and Greek and Roman myth and psychology. I developed, my worldview kind of out of all of these different things. And at the end of the day, I just thought, well, I guess when we die, we just go in the ground and that's it. And we stop existing. And I didn't like that thought. I didn't like it. It's not like I was proud to be an atheist, I just felt like this is what I believe and I don't know what to do about it. But I wasn't doing anything about it. I was just living my life, and I got into other things. I got into eating raw foods, eating all organic, hiking every single day. Like I had these other things. I was sunbathing like there was no tomorrow. And I got hired by this guy to be in his tech company. He was a very, alternative minded kind of individual. He was in a rock band and everything. And he wanted all his employees to listen to Tony Robbins' Personal Power 2. So other than watching Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb on our little television, which was my singular exposure to anything New Age when I was growing up, this was my first exposure to this stuff. And I think it was 25 interviews, 1 hour, approximately 1 hour each. I got through the first 24. I don't think they made any dent whatsoever on my worldview, right? I get to 25. I almost missed it because it was those double CD cases where there's usually 2 CDs in the case, but this one had a third one in almost like a secret compartment. And I found it right before I returned it to the guy. I listened to that one. It was Deepak Chopra. I was like, yes, I resonate with everything this guy's saying, because I was into all this natural stuff. I was into natural healing. I thought, let the body heal itself. You don't need to go and get all these toxins put in your body and everything to try to heal you. It's better to do it the more natural way. And that's something that Deepak was very much a proponent of and talking about. And so it all resonated with me. So then I started listening to and reading everything I could by him. And that led me to that section of the library where then I found like the Celestine Prophecy and Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi and Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass and all these teachers. I'm devouring all this New Age material. And then when I got to, well, basically this was one of those rule of 3 things. So 3 people told me, you should read Conversations with God. And so I did after the third person told me. And it blew my mind. It blew me away. Reading those books was like taking a drug for me. It resonated. They all resonated so much. I loved it. I read everything that he had produced up until that time, Neil Donald Walsh. And then I needed some new material. Well, I eventually found the Seth books. And the Seth books were, again, another drug, like an even more powerful drug than Conversations with God. So then I'm devouring these books. There were like 32 Seth books when I started reading them. I think I got through 16 of them before somebody who was in a Seth group I was in online said, hey, you really have to check out Abraham. I mean, I know I was resistant to checking out anything other than Seth, but this person was like, you really should. And so I did. And then Esther, of course, is still alive, whereas Jane Roberts has been dead since 84. So now I've got this option of like going and seeing the person channel live, which I really felt like I missed out with Jane Roberts. I was like, I really would have loved to have been there for one of these sessions she was doing in her home. Well, I got to do that with Esther and Abraham. But before I did, I got my hands on all these cassette tapes of Abraham and Esther. And by then, at that time, there was only a few books out. So I read those. I listened to the cassettes over and over again in my car. And by the time I went to go see her, I was almost like, a fanatical fan. It was Sedona, August 2005. I get in the hot seat, which is where you get to talk to Abraham. It was amazing. I was, on cloud nine all the way home. And from then, I just continuously went to Abraham workshops. I went on 8 cruises altogether. I must have gone to hundreds of these workshops on land, flew all over the country to see them, developed a whole network of friends and people that I was acquaintances with that were all into Abraham too, like I was. And then I was on an Abraham cruise at the beginning of 2010, and that's when everything started to change for me. It was 2010. For the first time, I had been certified Reiki 1 way back in 2003. So this is 7 years later. Somebody's on an Abraham cruise with me. She's got a back pain. I'm giving her Reiki. And I felt like my hands moved off of her by themselves. And then I got a jolt of energy coming into my body that made me gasp. So then I said to myself, well, I got to start doing this Reiki thing more often, because this was like, I like that experience. So I'm doing Reiki on everybody and anybody, distance, in person. I had a massage therapist that would come to my house, my apartment, and I would do Reiki on, she would massage me, but I started doing Reiki on her before the massage. And my hand would lift off of her like this, and then it would move like this. And I would go, oh, that's interesting. I don't know why that's happening. I'm definitely not the one doing that. And then it would stop, go back down. This would come up and do this. And then it would eventually stop, go back down. Then my head starts going like this. And my mouth starts to move. And make those strange whispering sounds. So I thought, I wonder if I'm going to channel someday. This is really weird what's happening. So that's around the end of January. By early March, in my life, I had a lot of other things going on too. I had some physical pain that was really at times quite painful. And I had a home-based business where I shipped things. So I was constantly moving like big boxes around on my shipping days. And one day I was doing that. I was in such pain. I was also unhappy in my relationship, and I was just like really worried about this pain too, like what it could be. Am I going to need to get a surgery? Obviously, I'm not in favor of that kind of thing. So like I'm collapsed on the bed, crying, thinking about ending my life. And at the same time, all this wonderful stuff is happening, right? And so not that night, but the night after, I'm in bed and I'm sleeping. And I have this dream, and in the dream, I look at this guy who is an Abraham friend who was actually one of their videographers. And he was way into aliens and talked about them sometimes, and even asked Abraham questions about them sometimes. And I was not. So I look at this guy in the dream and I say, I understand now about the other beings. And that was it. That was the whole dream. We were staying in a desert somewhere. I wake up from that dream, and I feel like maybe there's a chill in the air or something, because I'm feeling some like tingly sensation coming in here. But it was the beginning of an enormous contact experience with ETs, where this energy is pouring in through the crown of my head and through my whole body, head to toe, waves of ecstasy, pure ecstasy. Like there's nothing I can compare this to other than to try to say like, it's an orgasm times something. I don't know how many, like 1,000,000, 1,000. It was so incredible, the feeling in my body that I was getting. And I thought through my time with Abraham, like, oh, Abraham's always saying, you ask, it is given. And sometimes, it comes like you ask and ask and ask and ask, and then it comes. So I thought, well, they're giving me all the healing I've been asking for my body. but that was my initial thought about it. But my initial reaction to it was to just go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And my body is, my back is arched. I'm, barely touching the bed because I'm so I'm so in ecstasy that I can't even believe what's happening. And then I say, one more time, one more time, one more time, more please, more please. And at some point during that, begging for more of it, I had the thought, I wonder what this has to do with that dream. Then I had the thought, I wonder what this has to do with aliens. Because I knew when I looked at Peter that when I said other beings, I meant aliens. So as soon as I thought the word aliens, I get a huge surge of energy. Boom, through my body, like hard, like a big one. And I go, okay, aliens, 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 aliens. Get more of this. And then I start talking to them and I'm asking them questions and I'm like, are you here to fix me? I get a no. That's disappointing. Are you here to play with me? I get a yes. Yes is not happening inside my head. Yes is happening inside my body. So I'm getting a surge of energy if the answer is yes. And then I'm asking them, like, are you from another dimension? Because that's all I ever heard Abraham say about aliens. Oh, they're from another dimension. Sometimes they pop into yours and they leave. And they said yes. I said, would I be able to see you? Yes. So then I'm thinking, should I open my eyes and look around the room? Maybe there's aliens in here. So I take my sleep mask off. I'm looking around the room. I'm not seeing anything, but the surges of energy are coming in again, like full force, like they were at the beginning. And so I have no concept of how long this lasted for, but eventually, of course, it had to end. And then I get up. It's like 2:30 in the morning. I Skype with somebody who's in Netherlands, because she's the only person I could think of who'd be awake at this hour, and tell her the whole story. And then at this time, this is 2010. My awakening didn't occur till around 99, something like that, with the Deepak Chopra thing. But before that, I had taught myself how to meditate because I was a chronic fatigue type person. Like I just hit this wall every single day of tiredness. And so I decided if I can't take a nap, which I couldn't nap either, I'll just lie down. And like when I lie down for 20 minutes, I feel better after those 20 minutes. So let me go lie down. And I'd set an alarm first. But then I realized, like, I don't want to set an alarm every time I do this. I'm just going to be more efficient than that. I'm going to count my breath. And after I breathe I'll let the alarm go off this time. I'll count how many breaths that was. And then I'll just do that every time I lie down. I'll just count my breath. So that's meditation, essentially. It's a form of meditation. Yeah. I was not even awake spiritually. I didn't know anything. I didn't know about meditation or anything. So but that's what I was doing. So this was way back in like 98 or something. And so I've been meditating for like 12 years by the time, every single day, like I had to do it. I didn't it wasn't an option for me. It was like, you can be a functioning zombie or you can meditate. So I'm already meditating 45 minutes to an hour a day. And then I decided, well, I'm going to add on to my meditation this practice of like trying to feel for this energy that I got like so bombarded with, like I'm going to see if I can get it back. And so I do that. I'd meditate and then I'd focus on aliens and I'd focus on like what that feeling felt like and that experience. And I could do this. For some reason, my hands would naturally do this and my arms when I would try to drum up this energy and I'd breathe consciously and I could give myself a full body goosebumps sensation. I can still do it. It's very easy, but it's not even close. It's not even in the same ballpark as where I was that night. So I basically say to myself, okay, I don't know what's going on with me, but I feel like I'm still trying to heal what I thought was a hernia. Now I think is like a slight tear of that area where you get a hernia typically near the belly button, but not so much that anything protrudes. And I'm still trying to heal that. I'm going deep into meditation a lot to do that. And sometimes I would start dry heaving, like I'm going to throw up, but I don't, like nothing comes out. But it's like a convulsion, it's like your body kind of undulates with this energy. And so I knew, again, something's happening. This is weird. This is, this is not what I'm used to. And so all the way to end of October now in that year, I think I've tried to channel once during that time frame, but I'm at an Abraham workshop at the end of October. It's a 2-dayer. The first day I'm sitting there, and at this point, I go to Abraham workshops. I'm just trying to tune into energy. I'm not even really like trying to ask questions anymore and make it really like intellectual, but having it be more feeling based for me. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start convulsing, dry heaving and everything. And I have to stop myself and stop focusing and, hope I didn't like distract anyone from what they came there to see. And I told my friends that were with me at the workshop after, this is what happened. It's been happening. I had that thing in March I told you guys all about. And, and so they're like, well, maybe you can channel if we all get together in like a semicircle around you and we have our questions. And we did it that night in the hotel. And the only thing that happened was I got energy that made me go like this. And I just sit there and do this for like, I don't even know how many minutes I do it for. Then I'd stop and I'd go, okay, maybe somebody needs to ask a question first, and then words will come out of me if there's a question posed. So they ask a question, I do this again, no words are coming. So they're like, you got to ask Abraham what's going on with you. And so I said, yeah, I do. So the next day, for whatever reason, I don't know, I didn't even raise my hand for the first half. So I had half a day left, which is 2 hours, to get in there and ask Abraham. The second half of the day starts. My friend, actually, one of the people that was in that semicircle, was in the hot seat talking to Abraham. And I'm sitting there in the front row, watching my hand go up by itself. And I'm like, come on, this is not normal. People don't raise their hand when somebody else is still talking to Abraham. You don't do this. But I'm just letting it happen. And all of a sudden she gets up, she gets out, and I get full body goosebumps up and down. And then they call on me. And so I go in the hot seat. I'm like, all right, what's going on with me? Here's what's happened. I don't know what this all means. They said, you're going to do what Esther does. And they don't use the word channeling. Channeling for Abraham is too broad of a term, I guess. So they said, you're going to do this thing that Esther does. You just need to work through the resistance you have to it that's in your body. And so we want you to keep doing what you're doing and just know that you'll get through it at some point. So that's what I did. So at this point, I had left the relationship I was in that I felt so bad about, like not wanting to be in and not wanting to like hurt anyone, so not wanting to leave. I finally did in June of that year. And so almost immediately met someone on an Abraham cruise, and she and I started dating from long distance. She was in London, I was in LA. We're Skyping all the time anyway. So in our Skype sessions, now we're including like a 45-minute to an hour session of me just doing this with her, like waiting there with her questions to ask. So at some point, I don't know how many weeks of this it took. We were Skyping every other day. So I don't know if it was like, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of me practicing. Eventually I started going, that was my first channeling. Then there was a time also where I felt like I was speaking, but it was just me. And she said the same thing. She's like, yeah, I think that was just you as well. But then when I said, we are here for you, the first time, I was like, whoa. First of all, it wasn't in my voice. It wasn't in the same tone of voice I speak in. And secondly, it was completely unexpected. I didn't know those words were coming, and they came. And I was like, okay, that's it. I did it. I broke through, and now I'm channeling. And that was probably sometime in November of 2010. And I've been channeling ever since. And that group that came through me initially was the only one I worked with for the first 3 years. And they wouldn't even tell me what to call them. They wanted me to give them a name, just like Esther basically gave Abraham that name. And Daryl has given Bashar that name. Those are not names they go by. And so I had to come up with a name, which it took me a year and a half to do, because I was so like concerned about, am I going to get it right? And I did a channeling exercise to get the name, but it was writing. So it was different than the kind of channeling I normally do. And somebody that I followed was was doing the exercise, and I decided to do it, and I decided to ask for the name, and I got it, The Creators. And then I got a weird confirmation that that was the right name afterwards. And so that's how my relationship with the Creators started. All the other ones that came later, there's a different story for each one. Oh, your sound is out. It looks like your mute button is
Yeah,
on.
sorry. Yeah. So, and how did they describe themselves? Were they ETs, in extra dimensional? Who are they creatures?
Definitely non-physical, they said, and definitely a we, like a collective consciousness, just like Abraham was, is. And but as opposed to Seth, who Seth basically said like Seth was an individuated entity of sorts that was like part of Jane's oversoul. And Bashar obviously described himself as an alien. So it's definitely more like Abraham. But basically, it took me a while to even get like what dimension they were in, 12, that they're universal architects. That's one of the things they are. Obviously, they're teachers as well, spiritual teachers. But yeah, it took a long time because they weren't, and I've heard Lee Harris say this too about his channeling. It's like, he realizes so much that it's not about the messengers, that I remember hearing him say at one point, like, he doesn't even ask the Z's, which is like three beings whose names all started with Z. He doesn't even ask them like any of those questions. But I think that was probably true for the Creators too. They didn't want it to be about them. And also, as a channeler, you can block certain things if you're nervous about it or anxious in some way. And I think maybe I at first, like I said, I just didn't want to get anything wrong. That was like, I was so concerned about getting things wrong that I didn't want to commit to a name and a place but eventually got all that other stuff about them.
And so you described so many things that, to be honest, has been happening to me for the last 12 months. That is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or even the physical modalities is incredible. My hands and my head moves in ways that I cannot describe. I cannot explain. But for this particular reason, also because I'm an engineer and it's so I try to understand the mechanics. How was the mechanic of your channeling? So how did you feel the information? Your body moved, so you had a physical response to it, and so you knew that this was absolutely not you imagining it, it was physical, etc. But in terms of the information and the words, were you hearing the words? Were you feeling the energy and translating? How can you describe how the message came out?
It's feeling the words and translating without knowing how I'm translating. So every single channeler, unless your channeling is of a telepathic nature with a being or a group that speaks English, but that's like so rare. I mean, these are beings that exist in dimensions where they're beyond verbal communication. That Bashar is even they're even beyond giving themselves names. That's why Daryl had to come up with a name for him. He doesn't have a name. They don't need it. The beings in these other dimensions, they know each other by vibrational signature, and that's all they need to know. Is that like, oh, I feel you, and it's all telepathic. There's no words. We think of telepathy as like, I'm sending you words. Like, close your eyes, I'll close my eyes. I will send you some words, and then you'll catch them like a ball, but it's really more, according to Bashar, he's described it really well, I think. You get on the same wavelength as another being, and this is why this happens for people when they're in love. They're like, oh, we finish each other's sentences. It's because you're in love. You're in the same vibe. So then what you're thinking and the other person is thinking is the same, because thought actually exists outside of us. It doesn't originate in our heads like we all think it does, because we experience thought as being in our head. So we think that's where it originates. One of my, neurons and neurotransmitters and synapses did this little dance, and now I have a thought. It's more like the brain is a radio, and and there's signals out there everywhere. Like, if you've ever had a radio, you turn the dial and you get either talk radio on AM, or you get sports talk radio, or you get country music, or you get rock music. It depends on where and even FM stands for frequency modulation. So it's all about frequency. It's where is the dial, and that's true for all of us too. Like if your dial is set on a really low vibration, well then everything that's of a low vibration resonates with you. You think, yes, I am a victim. Yes, the government is out to get me. Yes, they are putting stuff in our water. Yes, like anything that makes sense to like the mentality that you're holding, the vibration that you're holding day to day. Those are your truths. That's the information you come across on your Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And so you just stay in this low vibration. We have to raise our vibration to change the dial on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way to do it. Like one way or another. For some people, we go out into nature. For other people, they pet their cat or their dog. Other people sing. Other people dance. Other people do artwork or acting or sports or something. But we got to raise our vibration to get off that I'm a victim, everyone's against me, that person is looking at me in a weird way, they must hate me based on something about me, whatever. We do this to ourselves. Like we create our reality, and that's basically how we do it. We create a reality by setting a tone of a vibration that then we only get whatever is matching that vibration. So channeling is essentially saying, I'm going to raise my vibration. I want to see what's up here. I'm going to stop hanging out here where it's like, yeah, it's fun because we are on the same wavelength as so many other people when we're here, right? That you can relate to so many other stories that people are walking around with. And, but then when you go up here, you get a different story. You get you get a different vibe, a different energy. It's seeing things. If you look at the way that they see us from this broad perspective of like, well, we can see your whole story. We can see humanity's story. We can see everything that's going on that is the reason why you're living the life that you're living. And you probably don't know what that is. You probably don't understand. You think it's your genes, or you think it's your circumstances or something. But in reality, there's so much more to that story of why everybody's living what they're living. Some people choose to be born with a disability because they, as a soul, want to have the experience of having to ask for help and be taken care of and rely on others and surrender and all that stuff. Like you don't know what that soul's reasoning was for it. But I'm getting so off track here. But the initial question is I don't usually get words whispered in my ear. I think that's how Neil Donald Walsh was receiving the conversations with God, folks. He did automatic writing where his hand moved by itself. That's a form of channeling that many people start out with writing, which it's weird that I didn't, because I was a big writer. I wrote screenplays and articles and poetry and all kinds of things that I love to write. I loved writing a term paper when I was in school. So I skipped over the writing part and I went straight to the vocal because it felt like something wanted to come up and out of me. But that's how some people start, and other people will hear things, or they're repeating it. One thing I've come to trust is the visions I get. I get visions too. So the visions help to me, I think, to translate the energy into something. Because like I said, it's energy, it's not words. Every channeler has to translate the energy that they're receiving, usually through an opening at the crown of the head that allows the energy to come in, hit the brain, and then hopefully move down from the brain to other parts of the body, because you don't want to stay in your head the whole time, and come back up and out of the channeler. So that's the
And did you feel the energy in a specific location on the brain? You say about comes in from the crown, but does it localize in a particular way, or do you concentrate on a particular way on the brain to get the words, or you don't see any difference?
I actually wouldn't, even from my own experience, I wouldn't know that about the brain. These are things I've learned about channeling, but in my experience, it's like the whole upper body is electrified.
Okay.
It's like Esther Hicks describes it very well. She says it's like having your toe in a light socket. You feel like there's more energy present than normal, and for me, it moves me around quite a bit. I do a lot of this. I do a lot of this when I'm channeling. When I'm coming in the initial part, I look like this. So this is not me doing that intentionally. All I do is I say, okay, time to channel, and all that stuff happens. My arms will raise up by themselves. They'll start moving around.
Yeah.
Even the toning I do, they move my mouth and my tongue and my throat and all the stuff that needs to be moved to make the tones, because I started doing that before I knew how to do it. Now I know how to do it because it's been done through me so many times. But yeah, for me, it's like almost a full body, but not quite. I'd say there's not much going on below, say, the chest, because sometimes I'll even move like this while I'm channeling. But my head, I notice even in private sessions now, my head's doing this a lot. And that, by the way, this is something else you learn as you go. I didn't know what that was about. I learned from somebody that you have, of course, I knew this from psychology. You have two hemispheres of a brain, a left and a right hemisphere of a brain. You have the corpus callosum in between. It kind of keeps them separate. But when you move in a way that crosses the center line, that corpus callosum point, when you move in a way, or when you juggle, or when there's other things you can do too that link up the two hemispheres of the brain. Now you have one brain as opposed to two halves. So it makes the receiver, which is the brain, a better receiver. Through that.
My head just goes this.
It does, yeah. You can do that. I do this. Yeah. I all of them. Yeah, all the different movements.
And the reason why I was asking you, because I get the physicality as well. And when you were describing your hands going like this, and I start doing this, but then when it's about translating the word, I feel them here. I feel them on this side of the brain coming in, and I start speaking. But the words for me are localized in this area, but the entire body moves accordingly. That's why I was asking, trying to understand what was your mechanism.
From psychology, there are different parts of the brain that do different things, and there's a language center, speech center.
Yeah. And what? So many questions, Daniel. But let's start with this. Have you tried, when all of this started, and have you tried to validate who the messenger was? Was he really who he claimed to be? What was the message about? Did you embrace it, trusting because the message was positive? Were there, in all these years, did you have experience where you couldn't trust the messenger? You realized that you were channeling not the entity that was presenting itself in a certain way? Did you feel deception in any way over time, or in some occasions?
No, never that. Never deception. If anything, in psychology, there's something called internal locus of control and external locus of control, which means there's two. You can really say people fit into one of those two categories. They either take responsibility to the point where you blame yourself for everything, or like everything's your creation, everything's your fault, or you are always blaming everybody else. You're saying like, no, it was the teacher made the test too hard, that's why I failed. Whereas I'd be like, I didn't study hard, I didn't study enough, I should have studied more. I've always had that. I've always had the internal one. So for me, when I thought the channeling that I'm doing is not good enough, which I thought regularly. I thought it's my fault. It's something I'm not doing. I'm not going deep enough. I'm not practicing enough. I'm not, so I never put it on the beings. Of course, I doubted whether what I was doing was real, because that is so common. Now that I teach channeling, I've been teaching channeling for over a dozen years. I've noticed that almost everybody does it. Almost everybody goes, I don't know, it could have just been me. I probably was just making it all up. One of the reasons why we who channel feel that way is because you have to make it up. You are making up the words for the energy. That's your job. It's a collaboration. So it's always a collaboration. It's always that you have an entity and a human being. And when the entity and the human being come together, then there's a merging that happens of those two beings. So you're actually getting like a third consciousness. You're co-creating a being that's like part you, part them. And this is why channeling is so different when it's happening through different people, because every person is different. You get one person channeling Archangel Michael, another person channeling Archangel Michael, and they seem like they're entirely different beings that are being channeled. But it's just because they're entirely different humans. One human may spend a lot of their time focusing on Christian type stuff. Another, and that's why they're channeling Archangel Michael. Another one might be focusing a lot on conspiracy oriented stuff. So they're always talking about the government and the cabal and, the secret new world order, all that stuff. And that's just because that human being lives in that world. That's their universe. Somebody who is really into astrology will often bring a lot of the planetary stuff in to their channel. So it really runs the gamut in terms of like what that particular channel is, has as a filter for the energy that's coming through them. So that's why when people first start channeling too, they tend to sound a lot like the beings that they've been following. If they've been reading Eckhart Tolle, they're going to talk a lot about presence. If it's Esther and Abraham, they're going to talk a lot about manifestation. If it's alien people like Daryl and Bashar, they'll probably talk a lot about that. So it really depends, I think, because ultimately there's two things about channeling that are way overlooked by the average person, because the average person just wants information. Just tell me what to do, tell me what's going to happen, tell me about my past lives, tell me where I'm from in the galaxy, that kind of stuff. That's what most people want. But what really is the keys to channeling are the teachings. What is it that the entity is getting us to do that we don't do? Like how are they helping us through describing reality in a different way, helping us to see reality in a different perspective, giving us a different approach to our lives, helping us deal with guilt, helping us deal with anxiety, those types of things, right? Where, like I said, most people just want the information. The other piece, that I said there was two, is there's an energy transmission happening. So if I'm channeling for you, ultimately and ideally, it would be best if you were also open to it, to the extent that you're feeling something, you're feeling a shift happening inside. Now you're on the same radio station as me, and my dial and your dial are set similar. So you're getting your own downloads, you're getting your own information coming to you while you're talking to them, which is almost like a distraction for your mind, giving your mind something to do. But the energy transmission embedded into each channeling is so important. And people who've been doing the work on themselves that's needed, for all of us to do, are more likely to be attuned to the energy that the channel is bringing through, in addition to being, of course, interested in what they're saying. Because, we get our attention on what's being said. Is it new? Is it how can I use it? All that stuff. But then the sneaky thing that's happening is you're getting like this these downloads of energy that are supposed to like give you activations and attunements and, upgrades and all these things that we might not be able to describe with words. You go to a weekend where somebody channels, you come back, your wife is like, well, how was it? Oh, it was amazing. What was amazing about it? Like, I can't say that like they gave me the lottery numbers or anything, but I do know something happened.
How did your perception of reality change, and how did you change personally since you started channeling? What was the most?
Yeah. Okay. One of the first things I did around that time, I was getting, like I said, I got into Bashar in 2010 because of the alien stuff. So he's a big proponent of like self-healing too, just like what started me on the journey. And so he says, do this cleanse, this detox. It can heal 90% of the things that could be going wrong in your body. So I did the cleanse. From this guy, Dr. Schultz, the company's called American Botanicals or American Botanical Pharmacy. And I did this cleanse because I had that pain. And one of the things he recommends was raw food or only liquids while you're doing it. So I had been a raw fooder for 6 years. I fell off the wagon completely. I just ate anything for 6 years. And then when I heard that teaching from Bashar, specifically about the toxins getting lodged into the cells, and if you have a toxin lodged in your cell, then nutrients can't get in there. So the nutrients are passing right by the cell because the toxin's taking up all the space. So the detox makes perfect sense then, because now your cells can actually absorb all the vitamins, minerals, and stuff that you're ingesting. So that made such sense to my logical mind. I said, I've got to get back on this horse of like, I'm going to start eating healthier. And so I went vegetarian, then I went vegan, and then I started eating all organic again. And so that was way back in 2011. So it was like right after I started channeling, I changed my diet completely. It took me a while to like, I think, start living the teachings. You know what I mean? Like other than the things like that I could apply to my life, but actually living all of these teachings of Bashar, of Abraham, of the beings I channel, which now include the Arcturian Council and the Ascended Masters and all these different beings, like actually, realize
living your passion, etc.
Huh?
Living your passion, living in joy.
Well, those things were kind of easy for me to follow because ever since I graduated from Boston University, I never was like, where's the money? Like, where do I go? How do I like get into a field where there's lots of money? I was always like, I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in screenwriting. And then after that, I did like the bare minimum things I could do just to get by. So I wasn't like trying to make a lot of money. I was just like, I need to do something. I know I want to work at home. So I did a lot of like work at home type stuff that I could do. And then I found that I could do this business selling, buying and reselling stuff on Amazon, eBay. It wasn't a passion of mine, but I liked the adventure of it. Like I do like movies. So I liked being in mom and pop video stores and going through all the movies and like buying the ones I could resell for more. I liked it, but it would, and it was in that field of film that I wanted to get into when I moved to LA. But it wasn't until channeling came along that I was like, well, this is it. Like I knew this was the thing that I was going to do because I couldn't buy and sell on Amazon, eBay for the rest of my life. I knew that wasn't going to be what I was doing when I was 80. So I started to put into action what I could do. Like I can do workshops in people's homes. I can offer it as a service to people if they want to pay me by the hour, and I started to build up like this, business aspect of it from the end of 2010. And then by 2012, I really was taking it much more seriously in that way. But what I'm saying is like, it's one thing to know all this stuff, to know it intellectually, to believe it. It's another thing to like put into practice, like, well, I'm resisting this, whether it's a person or a group or a government or, whatever it is you're resisting, that is hurting you as an individual. And we have to like notice ourselves doing it before we can stop ourselves from doing it and say, okay, how can I accept this? This is the channeling I do with the Arcturians is they're big on acceptance, forgiveness. Because a lot of times we have to forgive either ourselves or others to move on from something. And then we can get to the higher frequency things of compassion and unconditional love. And like just putting all of that into practice, like how can I make this something that I'm excited about? Because I can't, my life isn't structured that I can just fly by the seat of my pants all the time and do whatever I want. It used to be that way for me, pretty much. But now I have like a huge mortgage and a daughter who's 6 years old. So like I have certain things that like I need to do, but at the same time, I have to make certain things exciting in order to.
Yeah.
So it's about like, yeah, it's about bringing a certain energy to things. And I think I'm blessed in a lot of different ways. And I think one of the ways that I am blessed is I've always been a person who also seeks out the fun. Like I've always been like the trickster, the joke, the one who's telling the joke and making the whole class laugh, or that sort of stuff. So to make things fun is something we have to do, like because there are certain things that like in life, like you have to go and like when you move to another country, like I did, you have to go and fill out these forms and you have to get a new license, and so there's things that you have to do in life that we just have to make them more fun, and we have to like not get down about like all the things we have to pay for in life and all the things that all the responsibilities, like we can carry that around with us like it's a weight and a burden, or we can get like, okay, I know I've got to do this. How am I going to do it in such a way that it's fun? I can see it as a challenge, or I can see it as a chore and a burden. It's up to me. It's an ongoing process of like, how do I take the information I know is true because it resonates so fully and actually apply it to my life so that I can actually live happily.
Yeah. So now it's been more than 15 years for you.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of perspective. What's happening right now? Are things really accelerating? Are really more people than ever before awakening and experiencing, let's say, getting in contact with energies and entities and intelligences that we were not used to before? A lot of people in this field talk about the shift and all the different type of prophecies, etc., etc. But in general, leaving those aside, what's your perspective, and what is the message that has been more of a constant for you in the last few months or couple of years? Do you feel this acceleration and this change?
Well, I mean, if I were to just look at my own life, I'd have to say absolutely. Like, I didn't do anything to earn any of this. Like I didn't. Like my awakening that I described to you happened by accident, so to speak. Like all these things were just orchestrated for me, so to get me to this place that the only way I could explain it is that it was preordained. The only way that it makes any sense is that someone up there is pulling these strings to get me in this position now where I'm teaching all this stuff. I'm writing books and channeling. My channeling has reached 10 million views on YouTube, and all that. Like it's mind blowing to me that little old me is in this position to like do this kind of work. But what I've seen, because I also talk to people all the time through my work. I'm constantly, like I said, I'm channeling for people. I'm teaching people channeling. The amount of experiences that other people are having, where they're having experiences that blow me away. I hear from people all the time where I'm like, I'm jealous of you. I'm thinking that, but you're having the coolest dreams at night. Like I have a cool dream every once in a while, but I have clients who are reporting these cool dreams in their sessions like all the time. And there's other people who have ET contact, like consistently having ET contact with real beings that are standing in the room with them when they wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, that's not as common, but ships, people seeing big, gigantic spaceships in the sky, like it's obvious something is happening. And there's other ways of, besides the fact that, like, yeah, now there's 8 billion of us on the planet. So out of 8 billion, even if 1% are awake, that's still a pretty big number, you know?
Yeah.
So like all this is, look at how even the Tony Robbins and the Deepak Chopras and those types of teachers have risen in terms of their, Eckhart Tolle have risen in terms of their worldwide popularity, and how many people know about them and have even maybe read one of their books. And but the real interesting thing is, and like what took me on that sharp left turn in 2010 was the alien stuff, which if that didn't happen to me, there would have been some other way probably that I got interested in alien stuff, because I was very happy just going to my Abraham workshops and learning about this stuff that Abraham was teaching. But I think like we're meant now to basically not just expect that the ETs are coming, but actually prepare for it. You know, like
this was going to be my next question, because we were speaking about aliens. So in your country, because right now you live in Australia, but you're American, and you know that the US Congress has been extremely active in the last couple of years. Since 2017, something has shifted with a big article on the front page of the New York Times and Politico. Then we had 4 or 5 different congressional hearings with witness testimonies under oath in Congress. And a lot of people talk about 2026 and 2027 that have been incredible, let's say, contactee, very, very prominent, that have been surrounded by US government agencies type of people, that have been taken very seriously. What do you think is happening right now? Are we really on the verge of open contact? Are we really on the verge of formal disclosure? Do you think that instead there's a pushback? What do you foresee in the next, let's say, 24 months, end of 2027?
Yeah. The disclosure.
And by the way, and sorry, let me add the last one part of the question, which is, you've now been very prominent channeler for a long time. Have you been approached by, whether directly covered or not covered by government, to ask you what's going on? Can you give us some information? Can you channel for us?
I wish. I've had that kind of like vision in my head of like, they're going to call me someday and say they need my help to communicate with these ETs. Like that is a thought that gives me goosebumps. I don't know if it'll ever happen. I know they have to be following Daryl Anka and Bashar, because he's like 100 times more well known than I am, and he's, the guy's been doing it for 40 something years. He's been channeling a freaking alien that he saw the ship, 50 years ago now. It's been over 50 years since Daryl saw Bashar's ship. And so that to answer your first part of your question, whenever people have asked the question of my guide to beings I channel while I'm in the channeling state, the answer has often been, yeah, it's about 1 or 2 years away. Now it's literally 1 or 2 years away. Definitely within 2027, we will have had a major ET contact experience where there will be, in all likelihood, I can't imagine it being any other way, and this is what the Arcturians have said and others I channel have said too. It's going to be like a mass sighting of ships. There's going to be so many ships in the sky, and I think it makes the most sense. I've heard Bashar say this, for them to be over the ocean, where it's not specific to one country. You know, one country should be getting more attention than the others, right? But yeah, to have it verifiable by so many, I'm sure, helicopters and things that will be flying up there and making videos of these ships, and everybody's going to be able to say, okay, what is going on? All the indications from different channelers have said that, yeah, it's coming quickly. The disclosure, as you pointed out, the disclosure has been happening in these what's called soft disclosure ways, a slow roll of information. It's being given out, you know, in drips rather than, and that's probably a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. I wouldn't want one person, especially considering who's in the White House right now. Like, I would not want one person to have that power, to be the one who tells us, yes, it's real. Yes, they're here. And, you know, because ultimately then that one person gets to tell their version of the story. And of course, they can politicize it. They can make it something that's to them. They can do whatever they want with it to stay in office, to get reelected. Like, that's why what most people want of disclosure is probably a very bad thing. And it's probably what's needed is you have another retired general from the military. You have another person who used to be prime minister somewhere saying it. Yes, we've had, I think, a prominent Canadian say it, a Russian, a prominent, you know, Israeli, like all these different people have said, yes, they're real. We know about them and they're real. So all the major countries with major militaries have that kind of knowledge, because they're also being shown, like, you can't set off a nuclear weapon that's going to rip through the fabric of reality itself. Like, we're not going to let that happen. So all this is well documented and well known within the New Age community. But the average person, we have a Spielberg movie coming out in just
June.
It's called Disclosure Day, and it is about this very thing. So the writer of that film wrote Jurassic Park. So I'm guessing it's going to be good, and it's going to have a lot of stuff in it that you and I know, and that will basically be a way to prepare people for what is coming. So yeah, it's definitely happening. There's no doubt in my mind that it's happening. That all the personal accounts of ET contact, in addition to all this other stuff, just all point to, yes, we're going to be contacted in a way that will be undeniable to the average person. And while some people might say, well, how do we know it's not just a hologram being projected from a satellite in space to make it look like this? We'll have enough time to debunk all of that. Like, it's not going to be some thing where they're sitting there for a couple hours and then they leave. They're going to sit there. These ships will hover there and will be getting some kind of communication. And at some point, based on all of that, those ships will land. And then the ETs will eventually come out of those ships and they'll start communicating with us and giving people the opportunity to meet with them. And they'll be telling us stories that will absolutely blow our minds. For the average person to learn about the hybrids and to learn about, you know, our true history and what's been going on, the Anunnaki, all that stuff, it will blow a lot of people's minds. It will require then a lot more people to step up and say, yes, I've known about this for a long time and I can tell you about it if you want to hear another human being's perspective on how this all makes sense. And so there'll be a lot of, like, a lot more teachers coming to the surface to play the role of in between for humans and aliens. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's what's going to happen.
So do you believe, and again, this is probably a rhetorical question, but of course, so in the spiritual movement, one thing is common. You go for sure with the idea of reincarnation, right? We have parallel lives or sequential
Well,
life.
we'll
I mean,
move on after this
exactly.
this
And
character.
so do you believe that this lifetime for you specifically was, apart from some of the lessons that you wanted to learn, to support humanity in this lifetime for open contact with ETs?
It's first of all, let me say that even the idea that like I'm special is hard for me. To,
No,
like,
it's not about being special, because
no,
again, I don't want to frame
crossing
it
it
like that.
as like an egoic statement because I don't sit around thinking about that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
it's hard for me to deny that what you said is true. It would be hard for me to say no, I'm deflecting because I've just been put in this position for whatever reason. I decided to do it, and have helped people. I know that I've helped people with the work that I've done, and because they tell me, and yeah, I do think that it was a choice. I don't know how I possibly could have said no at any point in the story I told. Like, I don't know how I could have possibly said, nah, I'm not going to do that at any point. So it just seems like it was all very orchestrated. And now, whatever I can do to help, of course, I want to help. I think that we need major changes on this world. I'm a big environmentalist because I love nature so much. Like, it's not that I'm anti-capitalism or anti-industry or anything like that. I think the two need to come together and find a way so that we can still have our industries, but in a much more responsible way, so that we can still have a beautiful world that we hand over to our children, where the water is safe to drink and the food is safe to eat and all that stuff. Like, I believe in all of that, and I think we need help. And I think, because we're not, because there is corruption, obviously, when you're dealing with hundreds of billions of dollars, and the people who have that and are owning all the farmland and owning all the water and all this stuff. Like, we need somebody to come in and say, hey, look, here's how you could do it in the way where everybody wins. Because right now it's like, well, we want our stock prices to go up, and we want, to be able to drill and do whatever we want, but we want a better earth for our children. And it's just like this. So what we get nowhere when it seems like the two sides are opposing each other and there's no happy medium, right? Or I guess the happy medium is what we're living, but obviously we're destroying our environment with the happy medium. So,
yeah.
And we're talking about cutting down even more forests and more, like eliminating more species from the planet. Like, we can't keep doing that, obviously.
Yes. No, I completely agree with you. So are you optimistic?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say I'm optimistic to the point where I know everything's going to be okay. Like, I know it. I don't have any doubt about it. You and I, we could have chosen to be on a timeline and on Earth where we blew ourselves up 20 years ago, but we didn't. So, we're in good shape.
How do you remain optimistic, and what would you recommend people doing in a time where, in any case, the upheaval in the world is quite a lot? And I mean, the last few days have been completely taken over by the Epstein files releases, but there's Iran, there's Gaza, there's Ukraine. So normal people that are not in the spiritual community and New Age community, etc., when they see the news, they only see destructions these days.
Yeah.
What kind of message do you feel passing as Daniel and from the beings that you channel?
Well, for one thing, and you and I didn't really touch on this at all, but there really is more than one Earth. We're not just all we don't just have to look at the earth out there and go, how do we fix this version of earth that we're experiencing? But it is a multiverse, and there are an infinite number of earths for all of us to choose from. So basically, if you want a better earth, you better get positive, because if you only focus on the negative, if you only focus on what the problems are, which is why I don't really watch documentaries, because I don't want to like continue to be like shown this is the problem, here are the people behind the problem, here's what we, so I do believe, I know to be true that multiverse thing, because Seth talked about it, Bashar talked about, all the great teachers have mentioned, like, you're not just living on one planet, and you don't have to like fix everything within this planet. We're just constantly shifting from earth to earth to earth to earth to earth. So if you look outside at the world and you say, okay, I don't like what I see here, I think this is awful, I think this should definitely stop, then every individual has to go, what is that a reflection of to me? Like, what can I change within myself? Am I arguing with my next door neighbor about a fence? Or am I still holding a grudge against those people who beat me up in 6th grade? Like, whatever it is, like, whatever you as an individual and I as an individual carry within ourselves, we have to change something about it to see a better reflection out there, because who we decide to be, the choices that we make, the free will that we have to use, and how we use it to put ourselves on in a better feeling state. In other words, changing the dial on the radio doesn't just get you different beings for you to connect with, it also changes which reality you're experiencing. So everybody has a choice, and I've known this for so long, and I know that I can always be better. I know I can always be more aware of my thoughts and how to change my vibration. And I know that we all have that ability, but I've been practicing it for so long that I know I'm going to shift to a reality ultimately where I do get to experience that moment at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like that really cool experience of like, okay, here's what's next. Here's what's next for humanity. Here's our journey coming to this next level. And I think everybody can do that if they choose to. And like you mentioned earlier, as a soul, we kind of choose these things beforehand. Some souls are going to choose to just be born and be Catholic the whole time and then just die and never know any of this. And that's fine. That soul's eternal. It's not like that was a wasted life or that person should have woken up or anything like that. That's just what that soul wanted to experience. And they got to have those experiences of that particular 80 years. And so it's fine. Like it's okay. Everybody is ultimately okay, because all of this, the other thing we never touched on was the whole simulation thing that people talk about.
Yeah.
Simulation. But the problem with the people who talk about simulation is they usually are talking about it from a matrix type of philosophy, that it's someone else doing it to us. Like, we're the victims again. Like, again, we are the ones who have no power and they're doing it and feeding off of our energy. When in actuality, it's all our own simulation. We're all simulating this with our own soul's consciousness. So there's ultimately nothing to worry about, because you wake up from this life and you realize this life was always a dream. Every near-death experiencer says that. Like, the life I was leading before I died suddenly became like meaningless, because now I was experiencing a real reality, like a real truth that I never got to very much tap into when I was on Earth.
Yeah. I mean, personally, mid-2023, I lost my dad and one of my best friends, and that pushed me to, I was not religious, I was not spiritual before then, but I was already looking into UFOs and bridging already the divide between the nuts and bolts UFOs, the craft, etc., and the consciousness aspects, the psychic ability, channeling, etc. And that pushed me towards researching more. And then at the end of last year, 29th of December 2024, I've experienced the connection with my dad and my friend, which was overwhelming. I never felt so much love.
Yeah.
Since then, my fear of death completely disappeared. Right now, like you, I'm not scared. I simply want to experience the cool stuff. I want to experience the ships coming down. I want to experience contact. I'm not worried about this life. I'm concentrating on, I want to experience that reality coming in my lifetime. Yeah.
Because it's fun. Because it's what it's all about. Is how are we going to expand our consciousness in this lifetime? You know, that's the fun part. But yeah, you know, it's so much better than just fearing death and judgment and all that stuff, which unfortunately so many people are going through life doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, I took already a lot of your time, but I want to ask you, first of all, where do people find you? How can they engage with you? How do you help people normally?
Well, I have a website and it's my name. It's danielscranton.com. And my YouTube channel is also just my name, Daniel Scranton. And people can follow me on Instagram, which is @DanielScrantonChannels. Those are 3 ways to connect. If they go on my website, they'll see there's events I'm doing all the time. There's one-on-one session possibilities, but I do group events all the time. I have so many recordings on there, so many meditations, and they can subscribe and find out what the latest message is that I've channeled, and also find out what's coming up for the week that they might want to join. For most of my events are just 11/11 if they want to join for that much.
And can people learn to channel? You touched on this, but can you talk a bit about what you teach and how you teach, and what kind of results have you seen in people? What kind of transformation have you seen in people?
Look, it really depends on where the person is when they start and how dedicated they are to it. Because if a person doesn't stick with it, there's a good chance they won't do it. But if they do, if they're serious about it, they're going to get something from working either one-on-one with me or in a class or a course. I do longer courses that span months and months. And I give people the tools, the tricks, you know, the tips and all the information that they could possibly ever need to channel. And then it's up to them. They have to sit and actually make time in their lives and raise their vibration and do it. And if they do, I mean, I've seen amazing results. I've seen people start channeling and I go, wow, this person's already better than me at this. Like when they just started, I've said that to myself so many times.
And I gotta say, I've done a few of your courses, a few of your meditations, and I started channeling a year ago. It was after a mushroom ceremony for me, but there were some very crazy experiences before the mushrooms. And then after the mushroom, everything closed. And 6 weeks later, during a morning meditation, the channel reopened in a very unexpected way. But yes, I can attest that your meditations and your practices are great, and I've enjoyed them very much. So thank you very much, Daniel, for your time, for your kindness, and I'll speak to you. I'll book another session with you to ask the Arcturian Council some personal questions, because I know it's going to be a few months before I can book something with you, but we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Antonio. Thanks for having me on. Very blessed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Something is Up is still at the very beginning, so every bit of support makes a huge difference in my ability to bring you more amazing stories and incredible guests. If you enjoyed this conversation and feel called to support the channel, I'd be super grateful if you could just click the like and subscribe buttons and share the video with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.